struggling with feeling like you have to choose between frugal living and minimalism? Can you do both? In this video, I'm going to give you 2 definitions and 3 tips to help you decide. Hello and welcome. I'm Amy, and here at Frugal Over 50, I give you tips and tools for frugal minimal living personally tested by me. If you're here for the very first time, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I hope that you will subscribe, click the notification bell, and give this video a like if you like this kind of content. Now let's get right to it. Let's start with our definitions. I recently gave you a definition from the great Bella Sokunbi of Clever Girl Finance, and her definition of frugal living is, frugal living is the act of being very intentional with your spending. To Bella's wonderful definition, I always add, it involves being very honest with yourself about your finances. Now, our definition of minimalism comes from J.D. Roth of Get Rich Slowly, and his definition is, minimalism is the pursuit of less. A very minimalist definition for minimalism. Now, there are 3 ways that you can look at your life to identify, do you tend to lean more toward frugal living or do you tend to lean toward minimalism? And is there a way that you could work it out to sort of swing back and forth between the 2 or choose one or do both? The first is in the area of value. If you lean more toward frugal living, then you have your spending priorities set. You know exactly what you want. And when you find a good value, if you have the money, because you've been honest about your financial situation, you may stock up. So you might end up with a large stash of certain household supplies, for instance, or a large stash of certain kinds of non-perishable foods, or even freezer foods if you have a big freezer. People who are into frugal living often will have large gardens, big chest freezers, cellars, that sort of thing. Because when a good deal comes around, you want to be ready for it, you want to stock up, and you want to take care of yourself and your family and even your community based on your frugal living. On the other hand, your values, if you lean more toward minimalism and the pursuit of less, will be slightly different. You won't necessarily be interested in stocking up on anything. You just want one of a good thing. And you don't really care if you have a cellar full of produce or a garden. You might enjoy it, but it would still be a minimal garden with a minimal aesthetic. Now, I have tested both of these values out, and if you stick around a little bit later, I'm going to tell you how it's worked out in my life. And it may be the same as yours or it may be different, so stick around and find out. Second of all, when it comes to spending, this is a big word for both frugal living people and for minimalists. If you are a minimalist, then spending happens with certain priorities, and the priorities have to do with having enough that you can survive for a while without having to go to the store, and stocking up at certain price points, really taking care of having the basics in large enough amounts that you can make it without having to buy the most expensive option because you ran out of the stuff that you bought on sale. So you're constantly looking for deals, you're constantly looking for sales, but you're not looking for them just for the sake of looking, not at all. You're looking for them within certain spending priorities, certain brands, certain price points, certain stores that really help you to keep your house stocked up, keep your family fed, and keep everything rolling along in your life so that you don't ever run out. If you are focused on minimalism, you're not thinking about that at all. You're just thinking about, I'm gonna get that one pair of boots. It may cost me the world, but I'm never buying another pair of boots because that's my boots for life. It's a completely different philosophy of how you decide on your spending. And again, I've got some ideas for you about how this has worked out in my life so far. So stick around to hear about that. By the way, if you're still with me, I know that you're into this kind of subject, so please do subscribe, click the notification bell, and give this video a like, because I know you like it or you wouldn't be here. Our last area of comparison is in the area of stuff. And this directly relates to what has just come before. What do we value and how is our spending? When we think about stuff, the classic minimalist thing is very little. If you tend more towards frugal living, you're not really thinking about how much stuff you have at any given time. You're just thinking about whether you have enough to get you through the next month or the next couple of months or whatever period of time you are collecting possessions for. If you're thinking about minimalism, you just want it all gone. Let me talk to you about how this works in my life. I tend more towards a minimalism way of living, but the thing about minimalism is it doesn't always lend itself to frugal living. If you go on Google minimalism, you're going to end up with minimalist architecture and minimalist mansions and all sorts of things that are minimalist in aesthetic, minimalist in design. But these are nothing to do with frugal living. They're wildly expensive. I could never afford them, and I make a fairly decent living. Another way of thinking about minimalism is to pare down your possessions, and that's where I've tended to go in my minimalist ideal. I have said for years that if I had my ideal life, all of my possessions would fit into one backpack. That's my minimalist ideal. It's not my reality. I have children, I have pets, I have a house, I have a job, I have lots of responsibilities that keep me from that. But I've also told people that if you come into my house and sit down for too long, I'm going to throw you out with the recycling, because I really appreciate minimalism in its philosophy. But recently, I have swung over toward frugal living. I realized that I was not being intentional about the act of spending. Now that doesn't fit with minimalism either, does it? Because in minimalism, when you're pursuing less, you're going to be really intentional about your spending. And I wasn't fulfilling either ideal. But frugal living is what got me to become more intentional about my spending. And I started with a budget. I've got a whole series of videos here that you can look at on You Need a Budget. Frugal living has been huge for me in teaching me how to be very intentional about what I spend and what I spend it on. And recently, when the world seemed to be running out of toilet paper, I really shifted way more over into the frugal living side of things. And I started looking at, what do I need to stock up on so I can take care of my family, so I can take care of my pets, so I can have some to share with the community? And I'm telling you this because if you are asking yourself, am I a person who likes frugal living or am I a person who likes minimalism? It's possible that you're both. And it's entirely possible that, like me, you kind of swing back and forth between the two, depending on what your priorities are at the time. I still have a very minimalist aesthetic. If you came to my house, you would see that I don't have very much on the walls. This stuff here is pretty excessive for me. If you came to my house, you would see that I have a lot of space, but I kind of wish I had less space, but this is the best deal for now. And so frugal living wins. You would also see that my pantry is a lot better stocked than it used to be because I've leaned more towards the frugal living of buying when I find things at a good price point so that I can have them for later in case of emergencies. What's going to happen next? We don't know. I don't know. How are you going to go? Are you going to go more minimalist or are you going to go more frugal living-ist? I don't know. The thing is, if you understand the two ways of living and you understand what your personality tends to lead you toward, you can lean back and forth between the two as you need to, as your life dictates, as your world changes, and you can get the benefits of both. I want to leave you with a quote from Joshua Becker, who really speaks on the minimalist side of this equation, but I think that this quote applies to all of us. He said, "It is better to have extra time on your hands and extra money in your pocket than extra stuff in your closet." And for the most part, I have to say, I agree. If you do too, if you want to know more about frugal living, if you want to know more about minimalism, then subscribe, click the notification bell, give this video a like, and come back next time. I can't wait to see you soon. Bye.